Hi there, and welcome to my review of Mary and the Witch's Flower. So Mary and the Witch's Flower is an anime coming out of a new studio called Studio Ponnoc, and it's a really interesting film just because of what it means for anime and for cinema right now. So Studio Ghibli, for about 30 years, were the leading animation studio on the planet. They were providing the best cinema in the animated world year after year, consistently. The two big directors there, Hayao Miyazaki and Akira Takahata, really were revolutionaries, and they really were people who churned out masterpiece after masterpiece after masterpiece. Their films are timeless. The Studio Ghibli closed a few years ago, and a bunch of the staff moved over to found this new studio, Studio Ponnoc. Ghibli is incidentally now coming back because Miyazaki has a new film, but basically, Studio Ponnoc is the next Ghibli. It's a studio where the Ghibli staff are now working. If this film is good and if this film succeeds, it will allow the Ghibli people to keep on making new films. So the instant question is, does Mary and the Witch's Flower prove that they can do it? Prove that they can be the next Ghibli? Which is a very tall task indeed, because Ghibli are so well renowned. And I think Mary and the Witch's Flower is a film which certainly is not on the level of Ghibli's best work, very far from it, but it's a sort of film that proves that there is a chance that Ponnoc will do this. It's very promising, to say the least. The director of Mary and the Witch's Flower is Hiromasa Yonebayashi, who kind of built up a reputation at Ghibli and has become one of Ghibli's best directors. He was never on the level of Miyazaki and Takahata, but I think he was almost certainly the greatest other director that ever really worked there. He's been working at Ghibli since the 90s, and this is his fifth film outside Ghibli. His previous two films were Arrietty, which is a pretty strong film, and When Manny Was There, which is one of Ghibli's finest masterpieces and holds up just as strong as Miyazaki and Takahata's work. So Yonebayashi has a reputation and he has a good career behind him. Mary and the Witch's Flower is kind of a bit of a divergence for him. It's a lot more fantastical than his previous films, but I think what's really crucial is he built himself a bit of an identity, and I think what's really clear is Yonebayashi is now a director who I know has a style and I know has a type of movie that he likes to make. I think some people have very unfairly maligned Mary and the Witch's Flower as just being a series of Ghibli tropes transferred over to a new studio, whereas I actually think this is Yonebayashi's thing, kind of. Again, I think he's kind of proven himself to have the same things that he goes back to over and over again. I think whereas Miyazaki built up a career based in entirely fantastical works and the occasional lesser fantastical one, and Akira Takahata built up a career based on realism, based on real characters, based on humanity, based on Japanese culture, I think Yonebayashi kind of built up a kind of middle ground. I think across Arrietty and When Manny Was There and now Mary and the Witch's Flower, we see that his films are all fantastical and they all feature fantasy, but he also has a very strong connection to keeping his films set in the human world, and I think he has a very strong connection to keeping films humanised. I don't think he is like Miyazaki and someone who creates entire fantasy worlds, and I don't think he's someone like Takahata who just takes human stories. I think he mixes both styles very, very well, and I think he has built an identity for himself. I think he's built up an identity of creating strong female characters in all of his films. All three films feature strong female leads. He adapts some very specific sources, and all three of his films are adapted children's books from Britain. So he's definitely a bit of an Anglophile, and he's someone who has built up a sort of very standard thing that he does over and over again. And, you know, it has worked. When Manny Was There is a masterpiece. So Mary and the Witch's Flower is kind of his style again, but this time there's a much more emphasis on the fantasy and less on the reality side of things. Whereas Arrietty and When Manny Were There were very much 50-50, this is very much the fantasy film. And I have to say that mostly works out. The fantasy here is pretty damn wonderful. It's a film that's full of wonder, it's full of life and energy, the visuals are fantastic, every single scene is just beautiful, there's so many just fantasy ideas thrown around, and I think this is a film which has a lot of the Ghibli-esque fantasy elements. It has the flying, it has the majesty of nature in so many shots, it has a real emphasis on a female lead out of her place. And I think Yonebayashi incidentally has really made three strong female leads in all his films. That's a real testament to his strong characters. They're really well-rounded characters. They're characters who aren't just strong, they're actually weak at times. They're able to be flawed, they're able to cry. They're not always perfect, they do falter. And I think that's really what makes his characters well-rounded in a way that some filmmakers don't always do. The other thing about this film is that although it is fantasy, it is definitely Yonebashi's kind of mix of fantasy and tangling with the real world. So there's a real emphasis here on the female lead. Although she goes to a fantasy world, and the fantasy world is part of the story, she constantly makes a point of once she's done in the fantasy world, she is going home. She is not intent on staying in the fantasy world forever, and I feel like that connection to home is something that Yonebayashi has used multiple times. His films are often about people trying to find home and trying to find their place, and I think that's something that he draws on again and again and again, and I think he has now built an identity, and I think with an identity comes the potential for Studio Ponnoc to have a real auteur with them. It has the potential for somebody to have a consistent thing. They thrive upon making stories like this, and if that is the case, Based and Studio Pornock have a very long and bright future ahead. They have someone at the helm who has a style that is his, that is uniquely what he does. So that's a real good thing for them. So Mary and the Witch's Flower is certainly flawed though. Although it is a kids film, it is certainly one of those films which is very much childish, and although that has never stopped me from liking other Ghibli films that are childish, this is a film which is very much childish, and I think it's just overflowing with imagination. And it leads to a problem which some lesser Ghibli films like Tales from Earthsea and Howl's Moving Castle have, which is there's so many fantasy ideas, there's so many ideas thrown out there that they don't get enough time to be developed. It's kind of hard to really tell how the magic works in Mary and the Witch's Flower. It's hard to tell how all the creatures relate to each other. It's hard to tell how it actually functions. I mean, that is a flaw, but that is the best kind of flaw. If your flaw is you're too imaginative, that's not bad. Mary and the Witch's Flower still worked, and the thing that really struck me was it's just really enjoyable. I found it really, really fun, and I found that I just got swept away with its wonderful visuals and its lush vistas and its fantastic landscapes and its beautiful character design, and it's really well animated. It's one of those films that is really solidified in my mind that Hiromasa Yonebayashi has the potential to produce another masterpiece. He might produce yet again another one. Manny was there at some point. This is his weakest film, and it isn't a film which I think is going to blow anyone away. But I think if this is the sort of film they can start off with, it shows that they can have potential, and I think it shows that they are still imaginative. They still make films that feel like Ghibli movies. They're still making films that feel good. They have someone at the helm who has the ability to make other films and better films. I think this is a really strong start for Studio Pornock, and they couldn't have really started much better short of actually making a masterpiece to begin with. So this is a solid start for them, and I think as a film this is totally fun, recommended. It's not mind-blowing. It would certainly sit among the worst Ghibli movies were it a Ghibli movie, but that is not a criticism because I do think Ghibli's worst films are still pretty much generally pretty good. It's flawed, it's a bit stupid, it doesn't really do much beyond solidify the strengths of the people involved and solidify and prove that they have the ability to produce Ghibli-like movies and keep Ghibli's legacy going. I think this is just proof that Ghibli is not dead and their influence will be felt in very large areas of the anime community. It proves that there is a studio out there that will continue what Ghibli were doing, and I hope that leads to more and more films like this, and hopefully better films, because although this is a really good film, this is a film that could be improved, and I think a streamlined, more efficient, better, more controlled version of this kind of film is exactly the sort of thing they should be trying to do next, and I think that is exactly what they can do. I think it's perfectly achievable, and I'm looking forward to whatever Studio Pornock do decide to do next. That's what I thought of Mary and the Witch's Flower. I've seen quite a wide range of responses to this film, so I'd love to hear your thoughts if you've seen it. If you like this video, then please give it a like, and if you want to subscribe, you can. I post reviews all the time. You can follow me on Letterboxd or Twitter to keep up with what I'm watching, and Mary and the Witch's Flower, it's a good film.